Well, hello and welcome to the Hope Report. I am Melissa Huray. Good to be with you today. I have a great show coming up for you. Looking forward to sitting down with my friend Olivier Melnick. This will be his second time on the Hope Report, and he is a man about town. You see him making the podcast circuit. He has a weekly show he does. He has certain brothers in the field here of end times and dispensationalism who he exchanges, interviews with. I guess they go on each other's show. He has one called Three Jews and Five Opinions. Olivia, he's a funny guy. I like bantering with him, and he and I were just talking before we started hitting record on this because it is going to air. You'll be seeing this Friday morning, but we're already getting fired up as we were exchanging thoughts about the state of the world right now, the anti-Semitism, the normalization of evil, people celebrating. I mean, just this complete reversal, this upside down world where what is good is evil, what is evil is good. And I called the show Satan's Last Stand because of a clip I saw Olivier put out, I think, on Instagram, where he was talking about the devil ramping up his fanatical efforts to try and destroy the Jewish people because he knows his time is short. He's running on fumes. He's not going to retire in Boca Raton, as Olivier said. But looking through the Bible, you see there is an age-old anti-Semitic plot that Satan wants to kill Jewish people, and he will take whoever he can along with him to aid him in that mission. I wanted to, before we bring Olivier in, just read a few scriptures here, just to give you a little summary kind of some of these things that we have seen from the pages of Scripture. It starts back in Genesis 3:15 in the Garden of Eden. After the fall of man, Genesis 3:15, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. So Satan has a rabid hatred for the nation of Israel, for the physical descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, for the nation from which the Messiah would come. And if he could reach his goal of destroying every last Jewish person, theoretically, he could keep the kingdom from coming. Because from joining me here every day, it's hard to stop talking about Israel and the role that Israel plays in the coming kingdom, because there is no coming kingdom. There is no reign of Christ without repentant Israel. That remnant is the linchpin. It's not the church bringing in the kingdom. It's the restored Jewish remnant at the end of the tribulation. A couple more here. Exodus 1, verse 16. This is Moses, the little baby in the basket, and Moses is set apart. He's a theocratic administrator for the Lord. He receives the Mosaic law. They wanted to kill all the babies, all the Hebrew babies. It says in Exodus 1:16, and he said, when you do the duties of a midwife for the Hebrew women and see them on the birth stools, if it is a son, then you shall kill him. But if it is a daughter, then she shall live. This is an interesting one I didn't know about till relatively recently, 2 Chronicles 22:10. And I'm reading through the book. I'm reading through the Bible chronologically right now on a live stream. I'm halfway through. I've got 24 more days to finish. But I'm in 2 Kings and on 2 Chronicles. But this story of Joash, he was preserved. He would have been the last one to continue with the Davidic line. And it says in 2 Chronicles 22:10, now when Athaliah, the mother of Ahaziah, saw that her son was dead, she arose and destroyed all the royal heirs of the house of Judah. But Jehoshabeth, the daughter of the king, took Joash, the son of Ahaziah, stole him away from among the king's sons who were being murdered, and put him and his nurse in a bedroom. So Jehoshabeth, the daughter of King Jehoram, the wife of Jehoiada, these are quite the names, the priest, for she was the sister of Ahaziah, hid him from Athaliah so that she did not kill him. And he was hidden with them in the house of God for 6 years, while Athaliah reigned over the land. The Lord would not let the Davidic line be destroyed because he made an unconditional covenant with David that he would have descendants and that the Davidic throne would be set up in Jerusalem and Jesus would reign there soon at the end of the tribulation, when the remnant of Israel comes to faith and Jesus takes the throne. Of course, the book of Esther, we know that is a book full of anti-Semitism, a wicked plot to assassinate the Jews, wicked Haman, that Esther was able to step in the gap and plead on behalf of her people to the king. And the Jews prevailed. They were able to destroy their tormentors, which is something incredible, that tiny Israel always prevails in spite of horrific oppression and attacks. Esther 9, verse 1. On the day that the enemies of the Jews had hoped to overpower them, the opposite occurred. in that the Jews themselves overpowered those who hated them. It's really stunning how many people who are not aware of, Bible truth, they continue to say, oh, the US, is protecting Israel, and Israel wouldn't exist without the US. And it's really, again, it's backwards. It's we need them a lot more than they need us. We are blessed for our relationship with them. Matthew 2:16, this is jealous King Herod. He wants to kill all the babies under 2 years old. He feels like his kingship is threatened. Matthew 2:16, then Herod, when he saw he was deceived by the wise men, was exceedingly angry. He sent forth and put to death all the male children who were in Bethlehem and all its districts from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had determined from the wise men. So Jesus was protected, of course. The Jewish remnant is always protected. The Lord will not let the Jewish people be exterminated, be eradicated, in spite of the devil's tireless efforts to do that. In fact, Olivier, he was just telling me a story about his grandfather dying in the concentration camps. And there are people today, broadcasters, call themselves Christians. They deny the Holocaust. It's just sickening. So I do want to ask Olivier about that when we get him in here. It's horrible what his mother had to go through then after that. So as we get into it here today, Satan's last stand, 2025, so last year, and much worse now as we're halfway through 2026, but 2025 marked one of the most violent periods for American Jews, with physical assaults reaching record levels and anti-Semitic attacks happening on American soil for the first time since 2022, according to the Anti-Defamation League. Mamdani, this just happened last week, slow to respond to they say, suspected anti-Semitic stabbing. I mean, come on. In New York City, the perpetrator yelled, Allahu Akbar. Allah is the greatest. This is happening more and more and more during both attacks, the other being on an Asian man. I'm quoting here, stupid effing Jews, members of an anti-Semitic organization called Goyim Defense League, yell at a car driven by Orthodox Jewish men. And according to a 2025 report from the AJC, 91% of American Jews say they feel less safe as a Jewish person living in the U.S. due to violent attacks. But we are very thankful for Olivier Melnick. And maybe you don't even know a Jewish person, but Olivier is part of the remnant. The Bible promises a remnant that as I'm saying here, that the Jewish people will always endure. They'll always prevail. There's always a group of Messianic believers in Yeshua, and Olivier is one of them. So before I bring him in, I want to play this quick clip. And this is what sort of prompted me to reach out to him and say, hey, I want you to come on and talk about Satan's last stand. Let's watch this quick reel from Olivier talking about the very thing, Satan's desperate campaign to try to destroy the Jews. Let's watch.
It's not going to go away. It is open until the second coming of Christ, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse. I think because Satan knows that he's running on fumes. He's running on borrowed time. Satan knows that the rapture it really is, I believe, around the corner. We're not setting dates here,
right?
But it's around the corner, and he's going, oh my gosh, like I always jokingly refer to in most of my messages, Satan doesn't like where he is going to retire. He's not going to retire in Boca Raton. He's going to retire in the lake of fire and brimstone, and he's going to burn for all eternity and suffer. He doesn't want that, and he knows that the Jews at the end, who survive the tribulation, are going to say, "Blessed is you who comes in the name of the Lord." Most Christians tell me, you know that because you teach that too. They don't understand that Jesus returns when Israel calls upon him.
Amen. That's so good. Coming from the mouth of a Messianic Jewish man, doing so much to educate people, it gets burdensome, it gets tiresome, it gets discouraging because there's so much hate, so much pushback. Without further ado, let's get our friend in here, Olivier Melnick of Shalom in Messiah. Welcome him to the Hope Report. Hey, Olivier, how are you?
Hey, Melissa, it's good to be on your show. I was listening to you and trying to count all the Israeli flags on the background. I found 3 or 4, I think.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see the big one.
Oh yeah. Well, I could see it at the beginning. Yeah, on the other side. Yes. Thanks for having me back, and it's definitely an interesting time that we live in. And as I'm listening, doing your monologue, and hitting all the important points, I'm thinking like, why did she invite me? She covers everything so well. You get
Oh,
it,
that's
which
nice.
is such a blessing, because I talk to a lot of people, and a lot of people still don't don't get it, but you do get the importance of the Jewish people in Israel and God's plan, and importance not in a sense that we're Jews, so by virtue of being Jewish, we're saved and we're good. No, we're not good because we're like all people, human beings, and we're fallen. We're flawed. We still need the same blood of Yeshua to atone for our sins, just like anybody else. But outside of that, God has a plan for mankind that revolves around Israel and the Jewish people all the way to the end, as you mentioned in the clip that you played, all the way to the end of the tribulation. And Satan knows that. And so he doesn't like it because it does not include him at the end. He's going to be thrown away in the lake of fire and for eternal suffering. And he knows that if he can stop that from happening, it would be a good thing for two reasons. First of all, he would survive and not have to suffer for all eternity. He's a created being, so he's got he's concerned about his future. But also, if he could make that happen, then he would succeed in making God into a liar. And he started his career, so to speak, by basically trying to convince Adam and Eve that God was lying, and you should not listen. And he's continuing to do that. He tried to stop the first coming of the Messiah. We read about that in Genesis 6, and it didn't succeed. And he's going to try to stop the return, the second coming of the Messiah, by hopefully killing all the Jews. But fortunately for us, there's scriptures like Jeremiah 31, 35 through 37, where God kind of tongue in cheek say, well, if you can measure the universe and the sun and the moon and count all the stars, then I will forsake Israel for all they have done to me, declares the Lord. So Satan is trying desperately to destroy the Jews, to turn the world against them. And he's, to an extent, he's being more successful than I wish he would be. Um,
Okay.
the You mentioned the word irrational in your introduction, and that's a key word in in the current events that we were going through right now. My definition of anti-Semitism is that it is the irrational and satanic hatred of the Jewish people, Israel, and those who support them. And I added that recently in the last 6 months, and those
Mm.
who support them, characterized by thoughts, words, and actions against them.
Hmm.
Because a new development,
Yeah.
Melissa, since I last talked to you, is that now we have crossed the line where um, we can call them that if you want. That's another, we're opening another topic of conversation here, where Christian Zionists, people who support Israel, people who love the Jewish people, are now at risk. If you wear a T-shirt with a statement that says "I support Israel," "I love the Jewish people," or if you have a hat with a Star of David or a flag of Israel or something, in some areas of the world, and certainly in some areas in the U.S., you are now becoming a target, and anti-Semites will possibly hurt you. And I had to coin a word for that, and I call it collateral anti-Semitism.
Yeah, I mean that I like how you added that additional example of anti-Semitism. It made me think of this influencer that put out some tweets regarding the death of Lindsey Graham, and I think this falls into that category you're talking about because she called anybody who would say, this is unfortunate or having any reverence or saying pray for his family, simply because he supported Israel. That this is where the hatred was coming from. But she said that anybody who would say anything with reverence is a fat slob, a geriatric fool, or a blackmailed asset for Israel. Do you think that would go into that camp you're talking about? Somebody who says they're a Christian, they probably say Christ is
Absolutely,
king.
absolutely. There are some words right now um, that most people would not be able to define. But and when I say most people, it's on both sides, but mostly on the side of the foes, the enemies of Israel. One of them is Zionism, Um, if somebody is going to accuse me of Zionism, and this is maybe for your audience, if somebody is going to accuse you of being a Christian Zionist or a Zionist, then say, very interesting. Now, I would like to have you help me understand. Could you define the word for me? And because when you put the burden of proof on these people, they start stumbling upon themselves and they don't have any definition, and they realize how stupid they are, that they're just regurgitating words that make them sound like they're on the right side of history, but they have no clue what they're saying. So I kindly, respectfully say, tell me what you mean by Zionism. And then, of course, the
Mhm.
next thing you're going to say, well, it's occupation and colonization and genocide. So whoa, 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 whoa. Okay, so how is Israel? Where is Israel occupying? And they'll say, well, they're occupying Gaza. And then you can say, well, since 2005, there hasn't been one Jew in Gaza because we left Gaza and let it be self-ruled by the Palestinian Authority. And instead of building a beautiful seafront resort and infrastructure where people could blossom, they built tunnels, and the end result was October 7th, 2023. Now that's
Yeah.
genocide. Okay. And,
Yeah.
so what I'm trying to do here is I try to put the burden of proof on people. Define Zionism for me, or define genocide. Why do you
Mhm.
accuse? I'm actually, today, as we're doing this recording, I am finishing an article, which is the fourth part of a four-part series on colonization, occupation, apartheid, and genocide. And this is the one on genocide I'm finishing today. Uh, Genocide is a buzzword right now in the on the side of the enemy against
Yeah.
Israel. Genocidal country. They're just. And by the way, most of the left, whoever is running for office, whatever the office is, being city council, senate, whatever city or whatever office they're running for, most of the left right now, for some reason, they feel it necessary to include that on their ticket is opposing the genocide of poor
Yeah.
Palestinians, which has
Yes.
nothing to do with why they should be running.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling that people don't have a basic understanding or an acceptance of they can be asked that direct question, do you believe in Israel's right to exist and self-determination? And they will kind of, make this word salad, like they can't even say yes. But I love what you said about define Zionism. That's so great because you and I'm sure are same in that I want to come back at people. I want to aggressively defend the position, but even in counseling, we say, seek first to understand, or help me understand, or tell me what you mean by that. I like that. That probably brings the tension down a little bit, brings the temperature down a little bit. But a lot of people I've seen, it seems that they are convinced that Zionism is evil, even though it's in the Bible 150-ish times that Jesus loves Zion. It's his holy city. He's going to return there. But there's been just this uh, hatred attached to that word. I mean, is it just because they only cling to the political aspects, that they only look at secular Israel and that's their definition of Zionism, political Zionism? Maybe you
Yeah.
respond to that. And then also, when does it cross over into anti Semitism when you're saying, I'm critical of the government, I'm allowed to do that, but when does that become anti Semitism?
Well, I think you made a good point. Most people that are going to be criticizing Zionism are going to probably be doing it because they understand Zionism um, only from a political angle perspective. There is political Zionism. There is religious Zionism, there's cultural Zionism, there's Christian Zionism, there's all kinds of different flavors of Zionism. Um, the people that oppose Zionism, they will say like, well, it's Zionism is basically stealing land that belongs to the Palestinians,
Hmm.
and they're the first. They're the indigenous people that have been pushed out, and then again, this is what I mean, and it is successful at least in making people think. I would go like, Palestinian, great, let's talk about that. Define who's a Palestinian for me.
Hmm.
And they would go, well, and they usually say, well, the people that live in Israel before the Jews. And I go like, okay, now, do you have any records of that? Is there any records of the Palestinians being there? Because we certainly have records of the Jews being
Hmm.
in the land of Israel for thousands of years. It's called the Bible. And
Right.
archaeology also proves it. So archaeology, history, biblical history proves that the Jews have been there for at least, I mean, 3 to 5,000 years, depending on where you want to start. I mean, at least 5,000 years. Uh, so I always come back to the people and ask them, define who's a Palestinian. And because I will tell people, I do agree with the term Palestinian with you, but probably not the way you're using it. It was
Mhm.
a word that was invented and it was made to humiliate the Jews, after the revolt of 135 AD. And so they changed the Romans changed the word Israel to Palestina, and Jerusalem to Aelia Capitolina, just to de-Judaize and humiliate the Jews even further. And the name stuck; it stayed in history, and it was starting to be used. But all along, it was used to describe two groups of people: Palestinian Jews and Palestinian Arabs living in the land of Palestine together. And 1948, the state of Israel is born as a modern state. I mean, Israel has existed since God created, took the land in Genesis 15 and said, "I'm going to give this to Abraham and his descendants." But the modern state of Israel, May 14, 1948, born, and then within 1 decade after that, soon after that, Arafat, Yasser Arafat, is placed into the scene, installed into the area, so to speak, as the Palestinian leader, the leader of the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization. By the way, Arafat was born in Egypt. Just saying, he's an Egyptian,
Yeah.
was an Egyptian, and so he's there, and he's starting to reframe the word Palestine and give it a new etymology. And now it's got a geopolitical meaning of displaced people, people that have been pushed by the Jews, that are being killed by the Jews. But this is a misnomer. There's no such thing as a Palestinian people. There are Arabs. They're important people because they need Jesus, just like the Jews need
Yeah.
Jesus, like anybody needs Jesus. But there are
Right.
Arabs who live in that land that was renamed Palestine. And that's the true part of the history. That's the meaning of the word Palestine. But most people don't know that. You know what, Melissa, they don't know and they don't want to know. That's the
Right.
challenge. They don't want to know because they have a preconceived agenda. I hate the Jews. So
Yeah.
because I hate the Jews, what can I do to facilitate my agenda of hating them even further? I'm going to claim that I'm going to agree that Palestine is was there before them. The Palestinian was there before them. That from the river to the sea, this is Palestine. This is not Israel. Anything that used to be Jewish really is Palestinian. It's known as uh,
Mm.
Palestinianism, changing all the history into a Palestinian history. So they're looking at all those things that can feed their agenda of hatred and destruction. And that is pushed, promoted, fed, grown by Satan.
Absolutely. You said that
Don't
so
get me
well.
started.
No, and you said I did a great introduction or whatever. But I'm not Jewish. And I don't have family members who have experienced the Holocaust, and I don't have that connection ethnically. And maybe I'm kind of like a proselyte, like Ruth, or I'd like to think that. But the Lord has given me a heart for the people of Israel, and just it gets so exhausting, like you said, defending this to people who don't want to hear it, or their eyes are blinded and they don't want to see, and they're intent on hating Israel. That leads me to my next question, and I'm going to ask you, and then we'll take a break after you're finished. But you're talking about people who have convinced themselves Israel's evil, they're occupiers, they're genocidal maniacs, they're killing children, they're bombing hospitals, and all these things. But so many of them have never gone to Israel. They've never read the Bible, maybe with an open mind and literally, and they've only done proof texting. And another thing, as I get into this question about the Holocaust, is that many of them online are Holocaust deniers. They are convinced that it's made up, it didn't really happen. I actually saw something recently where they showed a picture of like a swimming pool or something. I don't know if you saw that, but they were trying to insinuate that the Holocaust was not that bad, like they were giving people recreational opportunities. And I just want to read you this tweet that was from that other person I was talking about who's running for office. But one of the problems with him, he also ran 2 years ago, but he calls himself an anti-Semite. He publicly, identifies as that. But he said that he was talking about the Jewish lobby. He said the Jews focus on the Holocaust to provide a victimhood cover for their own corrupt practices. And now I want you, as a Jewish man, to tell me about the experience of your family members who went through that horrific time that you were sharing before the show.
I want to open the file so I have a reference I want to read to you real quick here because I just did a message last weekend and there is a uh, political commentator. Her name is Melanie Phillips. I don't know if you're familiar with the name. She's a British Jew and brilliant, brilliant mind. And she recently said that the way that the enemies of Israel are reframing this whole thing, she said anti-Semitism has been reframed as an attempt by Jews to mask their own conspiracy against the public good and to conceal the crimes of the state of Israel. In other words, kind of like what you just said. And we're being accused of basically, if you criticize anything remotely Jewish, you're an anti-Semite. This is we play like people say, oh, he's playing the race card, he's playing the whatever. We're
Yeah.
playing the anti-Semitic card, like, oh, don't say that, this is anti-Semitic. Uh, uh, Listen, anything that's going to lead into the destruction of the Jewish people or their property, just because people don't want them to be around, is anti-Semitism. Okay, and so the reality is people are really getting very creative at destroying anything Jewish. And you mentioned this guy. You said he's running for office, and he claims to be an anti-Semite. Uh, Melissa, 5 years ago, and I've been doing this for 26 years, this very topic,
Hmm.
many books and conferences. And by the way, all of it is at shalomandmessiah.com. If you want to find the books or connect with us on ministry, shalominmessiah.com. And I have a blog and I put articles on it all the time. Uh, this man is saying that he claims to be an anti-Semite. What's so unique about that? 5 years ago, you still could not say I'm an anti-Semite because you would lose your platform. Okay. Now I'm not saying he's going to win. He's gonna end up being the next whatever he's trying to run for, but it has become, because of this irrational aspect of anti-Semitism, it has become trendy, and it's hard for me to say, it has become trendy to be anti-Semitic. People want to be on the side of anti-Semitism because it's almost like a private club of people of this intelligentsia, this group of intellectual people or whatever you want to call them, who said like, yeah, we have this in common. We hate the Jews and we'll work together. And that's how you find extreme left and radical Islam holding hands when they have nothing in common on the spectrum of ideology, from the extreme left to extreme radical Islam. There's nothing in common, zero in common ideologically, except for the destruction of all Jews. There, they will hold hands and work together. That's how irrational it is.
Wow, yeah, hating Israel is a fad, like you said. It's trendy. It's okay, where everybody's doing it, and the axes of evil. Sharam Hadian talks about that all the time with all of these groups getting together with Islam and communism, Marxism, replacement theology. People who have dismissed Israel, Roman Catholicism, whatever it is, that either they're anti-Semitic, or they just say, oh, well, God's done with the Jews. They can become part of the church, but that's basically it. There's no special designation for them. But before we go to break,
Or
tell me.
people who said that I'm not anti-Semitic, I'm just anti-Zionist. And Zionism being the recognition that Israel has the right to exist in the land that has been given to her biblically and historically and legally.
Yes.
Basically, it's saying I don't mind about the Jews don't bother me as long as they don't exist. That's
Wow.
what they're saying. I
Yeah,
have no problem with
that's
the Jews
true.
as long as they don't exist.
How is that
That
not hatred of a
that's
group
right.
of people that you wouldn't apply that to any other country or people group? So tell me what you were telling me about the concentration camp with your grandfather and your mom before we go to break.
Okay. This probably will take about 5 minutes. You want to go to break first, or you want me to do that?
Okay, let's do that. I want to give you time. It's a heartbreaking story, and a lot of people just in the idea of the Holocaust and concentration camp, they just I don't know how people come up with the idea that this didn't really happen, or how they have come under this delusion that it's not real. So let's take a break. We'll be right back. We're going to talk more with Olivier Melnick on today's Hope Report.
And like everybody else out there, I have used my arm, folded my pillows, got migraines in the morning from sleeping on poor pillows, and pillows are the problem. There is no bigger problem than a pillow.
My patented fill adjusts to your exact individual needs, and it holds that support all night long to take the pressure off your shoulders and keep your neck aligned.
One's the size of a quarter, one's the size of a dime, and one's the size of down. Inside every pillow, they're interlocked together. You see how that holds?
Oh my gosh.
That
It's
will
soft,
not migrate.
supportive.
Wherever you set that, you get exactly what you need for your individual neck support.
I do all of my own manufacturing in my home state of Minnesota, and every part of my pillow is made in the USA. It's machine washable and dryable, and it comes with my 60-day money-back guarantee and a full 10-year warranty.
Sleep is one of the most important things to your health, and my pillow is one of the most important things to your sleep.
So go to mypillow.com or call 800-676-2147. Use promo code LTV to take advantage of this exclusive Lindell TV offer. Order now.
Well, hello, everyone. Well, I'm turning 65, and let me tell you, Medicare has me confused. All the junk mail and the robocalls and everything else, it honestly feels like they rigged the system just to confuse us. Well, that's why I partnered and working with Chapter. They're independent, and they don't work for big insurance. They work for us. In fact, they're the only advisor that compares every single plan nationwide to find what actually fits your needs. If you're on the right plan, they tell you. If you're not, they're going to help you switch. And it's completely free. Just last year, seniors saved about $1,100 by finding a better plan with Chapter. So call Chapter at 234-LINDELL or go to askchapter.org/Lindell.
These are so amazing, so comfortable. And from the first night when I slid in, I'm thinking there is something different about these.
With my sheets, there's a story behind them. And what I did, Tanya, I started by using the world's best cotton called Giza. It's only grown in a region between the Sahara Desert, the Mediterranean Sea, and the Nile River. It's ultra soft and breathable, but extremely durable. My Giza sheets also include full 21-inch wide pillowcases that will fit over any pillow and deep pocket sheets that will fit over any mattress. I guarantee you the first night you sleep on my sheets, you'll never want to sleep on anything else.
MyPillow Giza Dream Sheets are available in a variety of colors and will be the softest, most comfortable sheets you will ever own.
So go to mypillow.com or call 800-716-6942. Use promo code L7 to take advantage of this exclusive Lindell TV offer. Order now.
Welcome back to the Hope Report. I've been having a conversation, a great talk with Olivier Melnick. Shalom and Messiah.com is his website. Go there and check out all of his resources. Today we're covering Satan's last stand. Satan is on the way out. He's a defeated foe. He's a usurper. He's the god of this age. There is a time in the not too distant future where he is going to be deposed of his earthly throne and Jesus is going to reign. So let's get Olivier back into the show. We will continue our conversation. Before the break, Olivier, I just, I wanted to know if you would share a little bit about your experiences with the Holocaust and your family, and also what you say to people maybe who have these ridiculous arguments for why they said none of this happened and the Jews are doing this just to cover up their crimes. So tell us about your experience and really what you say to people who attack what you actually went through, you and your family.
Okay, so the experience. I grew up in a Jewish family in Paris, France, in the suburb of Paris, in the very same house where my grandmother, my mother, and my generation grew up in. So it was like by American standards, it sounds weird, but it was a 600 years old building that used to be a hunting inn for hunters around Paris. They had big forests. So it's a 600-year-old building, goes back to Louis XIV, and so that's the house I grew up in until recently, and we sold it after my parents passed away. My mother lived there as a young girl, a single child with her mother, Jewish mother and Jewish father. Her father, Maurice Wansweig, was from Olika, Russia. Was born in 1898 in Olika, Russia, and he came to France, married my grandmother, and he was waiting for, you could say, the equivalent of his green card. Of course, it was not called that, but the equivalent of his green card. He was in France legally, married to a French citizen, Jewish French citizen, and waiting for the papers. The problem is, when he was expecting his papers to come through, was during World War II, and that was just not a really great time for a Jew to really look for any of those things. So, for protection, he ended up hiding in a cellar of the building that the apartment was, where you keep the coal and stuff like that. So he was hiding in the basement. And one evening, two officers from the Gestapo came and asked my grandmother, said, "We know your husband is hiding somewhere in the building. We are going to ask him to come with us for questioning. Please let us know where he is." And so she lied. She said, "I don't know. He left. He's no longer in the building. He's left a few days ago, and I have no idea of his whereabouts. I don't know where he is." So, and it was my grandmother and my mother in the apartment, and my grandfather, as this took place, was under their feet. And she lied, and they said, "We will come back tomorrow morning to get him. This will be your last chance. If he's not coming with us, we'll take you and your daughter." And of course, my grandmother and my mother were in France legally. They had their papers, they had everything, but they were still Jews. It was 1942, so it was on the early side of the of the war. And things were not as bad as they got in the last 3 years of the war. Next morning they show up. Oh well, before that she signaled her husband. He came back upstairs after they left, and she explained, "The Gestapo came to get you. Somebody in the building basically told them that you were hiding in the building somewhere. I lied. I told them you're left. So they said, I didn't tell him you were downstairs." And he said, "Well, I will pack my stuff. I will go find a safe place for the three of us. I'll signal you in a few days, and then you can move and come join me wherever I am." And that's when she said, "Well, that would be great, except they said if you're not there tomorrow, they will take Evelyn," that's my mother's name, "and me, and take us." So he said, "Well, that's not going to happen. I will go with them tomorrow. Don't worry. I'll be back." Next morning, the Gestapo showed up. He went with them, and from my own research that I did over the years, and recently that I confirmed by doing research at Yad Vashem, the museum, the Holocaust Memorial in Jerusalem, he died probably within 1 to 1.5 weeks after they took him in the summer, July of 1942, out of that apartment complex. The irony of it all, two things I want to add, is that number one, he was given away to the Gestapo by the neighbor upstairs who worked for the French police and who was secretly in love with my grandmother and thought if he could get rid of the husband, he could probably have a chance with the wife. So he just gave him away and told the Gestapo, "Come get the Jew." And what's interesting also, because this projects to what's happening today. The building, and I grew up in that building, so I'm very familiar with the building. Has about 18 different flats, in a U shape, 3 levels, 6 in each one, and they were in that building a lot of different tenants, and there was one family on the ground level across the yard from us. I ended up being friends with their son, and my mother was friend with the family, and then I ended up being friends with the son who was my age. They were really, really Jew lovers. They would have done anything had they known this was going to take place. They would have done anything to hide him or take him away or do something so they wouldn't get caught by the Gestapo. The rest of the building, they're all bystanders. They're all looking behind their blinders in their apartment, looking at the Gestapo, sometimes maybe with the French police coming to get my grandfather. They did nothing. And a bystander who does nothing only facilitates the work of a perpetrator. They did absolutely nothing. So my grandfather was taken and he died in Auschwitz. My mother was put on a train with false papers, and then she went to the southwest of France, right above the Pyrenees mountain range, right above Spain, and lived on a farm protected by a couple of farmers who became righteous Gentiles, righteous among the nations, as you've heard the term. And they actually, their name is at Yad Vashem. In 2011, I believe they were recognized posthumously as righteous among the nations because they saved my mother and her two cousins for the last 2 years of the war. And they did everything they could to protect those three Jewish kids. And there's many other stories that way, similar to that story. So my mother, her story actually was on French TV, and I have a video on our YouTube channel with her name. If you type on my YouTube channel, Evelyn, Evelyn, Evelyn returns to Pau, Pau, the town where she was hiding, you'll get this 10-minute segment with translation of how she was interviewed as she reconnected with the sons of the family 70 years later as they received the medal of the Yad Vashem memorial on behalf of their parents who saved her. So looking at today, I'm telling Christians today, you can be a righteous among the nations today. And there's so much hatred, so much anti-Semitism. We might have passed the point where we can change people's mind, but you will never pass the point when you cannot do something to rescue and protect a Jewish person. And as Christians, I think we have a great opportunity to do better than we did during World War II.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, thank you for sharing that. It almost brings tears to my eyes, hearing somebody with that experience and then thinking so many cold-hearted people in the world that would listen to your testimony and think that is just invalidate that or think it's made up. And what you said, a bystander who does nothing simply assists the perpetrator. How many people do we see doing that today? It might be pastors not addressing Israel. It's people who are just dismissive and cold and they do nothing and say nothing. They don't take a stand. They don't do any defense of Jewish people or Israel. That's just as bad, isn't it?
The bystanders exist today, and this, you're going to have to answer to God. And in Genesis 12:3, when God says, "I will bless those who bless you and curse him who curses you," God does not give a fence to sit on. He tells the people, if you bless Israel, I will bless you. If you curse, I will curse you. And so it's two sides of a coin. If you don't bless, by default, you're cursing. If you don't curse, by default, you're blessing. But there's no fence to sit on like, I don't understand Israel. I agree with some, but not with all. So I'm just not going to get involved. No, that's not an option. It's one way or the other.
I love how you said that. I feel the same way. It's very black and white. It's very much a litmus test. Do you stand with Israel or not? Do you support the right of the Jewish people to exist? Do you have a heart for them? Or is your heart hard and cold? Do you pray for the peace of Jerusalem? I wanted to ask you before I get to the last question about Psalm 122, verse 6, because it kind of struck me in a different way where it says, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May they prosper who love you. Is that a prayer for those who support Israel, that those who stand with Israel? Or is it something?
Before I answer that question, I want to add one more thing to the story that I just shared. Because I want it to be an encouragement to your audience. My mother was saved as a teenager by that family of farmers, and they're pretty much they were either agnostic or Catholics. Those are two options in France back in those days. It's less than 1% evangelicals. So either agnostic or Catholics, but good people, obviously. When you do something to reach out to help the Jewish community and to protect them, to rescue them, and to provide for them like they did out of the kindness of their heart, you are part of a bigger picture because my mother survived. She got married. She had me and my sister, 2 kids, and then down the road I got saved, and then about 10
Mm.
years ago, I shared with my mother. Well, for 28 years, I shared and prayed for my parents. But 10 years ago, I prayed with my mother and she received the Lord. Both my mom and
Wow,
my dad, the same day, got saved through me,
that's
praying with them. And
amazing.
my dad was dying of cancer. So the big picture is when you reach out to Israel and to the Jewish people, as a lot of what we do at Shalom and Messiah, you don't know the end result. You could be planting a seed, or like I said lately, you put a pebble in people's shoe and you make them uncomfortable. They're gonna have to make a
Yeah,
decision. And then down the road, look at this. My mother, as a teenager, lost her dad, at the hands of the Nazis, and then this family protected her. She survived, and the next thing you know, fast forward 70 years, she gets saved.
yeah. Wow,
So
I love the ripple effect and the impact that you can have
So
by
that's
blessing the
you
Jewish
never know. Yeah, you never know how the story's going to end, but you always want to look at opportunities to make a difference for the kingdom of God. And I forgot the question they asked.
Oh no, that's okay. No, that's great. I wanted to also. I'm glad you brought it back to hope. I think we are trying to promote. This is the Hope Report, of course, but I like how you made it crystal clear that you're either blessed or cursed. It really is that black and white. It's not just like some people like to say, oh, it's just Genesis 12:3. It was just for Abraham. No, it's a theme throughout the entire Bible. Obviously, God's heart is for the Jewish people. They're his brethren, they're his chosen people, chosen to bring in the kingdom. And if you read the Bible open-mindedly and you don't have your own mind made up already, he's going to show you his heart for them, and you're going to have a heart for them. So we have
Psalm
about 10
122
minutes
6.
still. Yes,
Psalm
Psalm
122
22:6. May they prosper who love you. Is that saying those who pray for the peace of Jerusalem? If we love Jerusalem, may we prosper? Or is it
Well, first
something
of all,
else?
you have to be careful when you use the word prosper and prosperity, because people might have a tendency to think they're going to get rich,
Yeah,
and I don't think that's what it could be.
that
Prosperity
wasn't what I
includes,
meant.
no. I know. Oh, I know that's not what you meant. I'm very aware of that. But your audience needs to hear that, because there's always somebody who's going, oh, if I pray for the peace of Jerusalem, I will prosper, and this is one way to get rich. Well,
Right.
connect that to Genesis 12:3. If you pray, first of all, praying for the peace of Jerusalem is praying for what? It's praying for the Prince of Peace. The
Mm,
only real peace comes from the Prince of Peace that we read about in Isaiah 9:6. Sar Shalom, the Prince of Peace. You pray for the Prince of Peace. The Prince of Peace will return. That's Yeshua, Jesus. He will return and establish his kingdom as king in Jerusalem from the throne of David, physically, in person, and that's when real peace will take place. So when we pray for the peace of Jerusalem, well, you're not praying for the absence of war that we have right now. War today, no war tomorrow. Terrorism next month, no terrorism. That's, from a human perspective, it's better not to have any war. But the real peace is the peace that comes when Yeshua returns. Uh,
right.
the challenge I have, when I look at that verse, is that verse has unfortunately become a little bit of uh, a, a good luck charm. It's not going to
Mm,
ring really positive with many Christians. A good luck charm with Christians when they say, like, "Oh, pray for the peace of Jerusalem, may they prosper who love you." It's like,
mm,
okay, and then
yeah.
what? So I tell people, praying for the peace of Jerusalem, praying for the salvation of my people, is the foundation. But who
Right.
is just building a foundation when they need to build a whole house and live in that house and expand? You don't, the foundation is prayer, and that's the foundation for everything we do as believers. But
Yes.
I use that verse in a different context. I tell people we are at a place where Jews are in danger. It's clear. Jews are being hit on the street. The property is being defaced. Yesterday, I think a synagogue in a suburb of Paris, people got in the middle of the night and stole 12 Torah scrolls from the synagogue. They have no use
Oh,
for them except they want to cripple the synagogue and and humiliate the Jews by saying, we're taking your secret writings. The Torah scrolls basically is the first 5 books of Moses. And so they stole them all and they haven't found them yet. That happens all the time. You don't even get the reports. It happens all the time. So I tell people, we might be at the place where we cannot change the hearts in the minds of people who are anti-Semitic, but it's never, like I just said, it's never too late to make a difference, to reach out to the Jewish community and let them know that we're there for them. So I tell people, if your Jewish friend is knocking on your door at 3 a.m, in the middle of the night, you open the door and they look at you and they said, they seized my bank account. They took my car. They are in my apartments. They're after me and my family. I can't go anywhere safe. But I know that for years you've told me that you go to a church and you love Israel, you love the Jews. So can you help me? Are you going to look at your Jewish friend and say, oh, I will definitely pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Have a good night. Or are you going to say, come in, let me feed you, let me give you a bed? And so I think that verse is great if you use it as a foundation. It's a promise that God is going to bless you if you bless the Jews. It's an extension of Genesis 12:3, but it is definitely for 2026. It's only a starting point. We need skin in the game.
Right. Yeah. I don't think that you can have a heart for the Jewish people unless God gives it to you. You know, I don't, like you're saying, it's not going to work to just recite verses or,
God gave it to you. You just have to, God gave it to you. You just have to read it.
Yes. I mean, and read it plain, literally.
People who read their Bible, in the proper context, historical, grammatical, contextual, consistent context, if they don't see the importance of Israel, there's nothing you and I can do.
Exactly. No, that's a great way to sum it up. I have one more question. We have about 5 minutes left, but back to the topic of Satan. One of the things I want to ask you is, there are some ways that I think are kind of difficult to discern that people are being used by the enemy to do his will toward Israel, to assist him kind of in his annihilation campaign. We know the obvious things, virulent anti-Semitism, but is there anything else you can maybe talk about, a way that he is using people, maybe that they don't realize is happening, to really further the cancer of anti-Semitism?
Well, you've mentioned, I think, probably the biggest one a couple of times in this podcast, being replacement theology. I believe that replacement theology is, at the very least, a soft form of anti-Semitism. It's basically the false doctrine or claiming that God is done with the Jews because they have made the mistakes of rejecting Jesus as Messiah. Now he's replaced the Israel of the Bible with the Israel of God, which is the church. This is, again, if you look at a contextual, historical, grammatical, consistent context, look at the Bible, that is not taught in the Bible anywhere. And the fact that God has preserved Israel and the Jews says so much about his character and his promises, not just to Israel, but to the whole world. His promises to us as believers, the fact that we are saved by grace through faith and that our salvation is secure. God doesn't change the way he hasn't changed with Israel, and the way he'll never change based on his covenants and his promises, guarantees that he will not change the promises he made with us, because God never changes. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. And so replacement theology is a form of anti-Semitism, and people who believe that in the church are being used by Satan to delegitimize and, to a point, demonize the Jews out of the picture. That's probably the biggest issue we have today, and that would be for Christians. For those who don't believe, they're basically buying the lies of the media about genocide, occupation, colonization, apartheid. And I spent a big chunk of my time posting videos and writing articles and books to equip people to defend those positions. But I would tell people, put the burden of proof on the people telling you this. Have them define what they mean. Have them explain to you where they're getting their sources. And at some point, you're going to say, you know what? Your explanation doesn't make any sense. You're repeating something, but you don't even know what you're talking about. So put the burden of proof on people.
Love that. Olivier, we are almost out of time already. Going back to the beginning, I love how you said putting the burden of proof. What do you mean by that? What's your definition of that? So you at least have a starting point. And we know God will be faithful to his promises to Israel and to us. And, it's a win for everyone. Israel's going to bless the whole world when they come to faith. So, Olivier, with 30 seconds left, let's pull up your website, shalomandmessiah.com. If you want to just give us some points on here, what we should look for, what we can find, how we can get involved in your ministry.
Okay, well, on the left, you have this Towards Messiah, which is a new series that I've posted videos, little 3 to 5 minute videos that you can share with unsaved Jewish people or with Christians to educate them on understanding Jewish people better, and also share them with Jewish people to point them to the true Messiah. On the right is a program called No Synagogue Left Behind, when I encourage pastors to reach out to the local rabbi and say, we have a security team. We want to offer security to a synagogue. Let's have coffee. We'll bring our security team on Friday night, on Saturday, because we don't use them on those days. And we want to protect you in the community. No charge. We just want to do it because we love Israel. And this has been going for about a year, a little over a year, and it's working. It's rebuilding bridges. And then we have resources on the website. Of course, you can sign up to go to Israel with me. You can always do that. But this is a great website to get resources to share the gospel of Yeshua with the Jewish people. So visit and connect with us. And if you want to support us, there's a way to donate to help us make a difference for God's kingdom and getting more Jewish people saved.
Amen. Amen. Well, Olivier, thank you so much for being with me today. I really enjoyed it. I'd love to have you back. It went too long from our last one. So God bless you and God bless Israel.
God bless you. Thank you. Shalom.
All right. I'll see you guys Sunday night for the Daniel study. We're on chapters 7 and 8. Have a great weekend. God bless.